we respect to the good relation between the India and China, but not sacrifice the Indian border and Tibet border. That's very important. Don't sacrifice for the betterment of the Indian and China, for the friendship of the China Indian. Don't sacrifice Tibet. That will be a big loss in future for the India. Because what is in his mind, but it is totally very good. It's very good that he's not attending the G20 meeting, because in Hindi Kawat he says Mukh se Ram 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 Bagal mein churi. They did the same thing in 1962. Chini Hindi Bhabe. Then their meeting breaks with a shaking hand with Modi ji, our leader. But now again, after a week, they release a new map saying that the Arunachal and all these are territory. So there's totally, we should not, the world should not, those who are loving peace country and who believes in to the human rights, or who believes in to save the identity and culture of the human being, they should not thirst to Chinese government. I'm not saying to the Chinese people, Chinese government.
Excuse me, India and China.
So very important things you have to understand, that there is no single country in the world today asking, recognizing Tibet. Tibet was independent country. So we have to preserve our culture. If we lose our culture identity, then Tibet will lose. Even we get a land independent. I mean, that all the Tibetans' identity is finished. Then what the use of getting the empty or land to us? So that's why we stand with the orthodox religion within the Chinese constitutions and constitutions. So this is our government policy and government policy. So that's what we stand for. That question. So that has to be answered. For this purpose, we come to campaign here, door to door, to the ministers, the leaders of the Indian leaders and public and NGOs, because if this the claiming of China, the border, so-called border, is totally illegal. The releasing of recently they released a map saying that the Arunachal and Ladakh and Sejin are their territory. That is totally illegal. It should be condemned by every person who loves the respect to the human rights, because there was no single inch of border between the India and China before 1959, and it so-called border is Tibetan India. So there's no right to the China to call that. So therefore, the Indian people, Indian leaders should politically stand up more against to the expansionist policy of China government, or particularly Xi Jinping, who come to power and he tried to provoke strongly against the Indian and his neighbor country.
Sir, I had two questions.
Our weakness, saying that China is very powerful. We don't understand what is happening inside the China. China's economic conditions totally depend on the public's money. Once the public demanded their money withdrawn there, the Chinese finished of there. And also, if the world trade with a Chinese good stopped, like Indian buying a lot of millions and millions buying a Chinese good, if we stop this boycotting Chinese good, China will suffer for the economic. So we shouldn't think that, China is very powerful, China is we should forget this thing. This is totally, we set a big, has a wrong mind in our mind. So China, the Indian is not, 23 Indian is not a 1962 Indians. The Indian is today 21st centuries, 2023 is Indian. So we have a power. The Indian can stand against the China anytime, anywhere. So that. Another thing, the impact of the Tibetan language and culture to the Chinese people. Now, in 1949, the Chinese communists come to exist. After that, the Buddhism and Tibetan culture, even the China hands a believer of practitioner of the Buddhism, but after 49 is finished, totally finished up, completed, erected. But now since last 5-6 years, there's more than 5 or 6 million Chinese are following Buddhism. So it shows that the Buddhism, peaceful, and peaceful, loving kindness in because religion or thought or philosophy is impacting very much to the Chinese people. Where they are gaining their own religion. They've been practicing for more than 1,000 years before 1949.